Here we are in a game week version of the Chant. That's right, under 7 days from kickoff at Doak Campbell Stadium. Bobby Bowden Field, the new lay-and-play surface is waiting for everybody. He's Irish Raffel, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, and you are watching the Chant or listening to the Chant on the Warchant Multimedia Network. And it's time to get you up to date on all things Florida State and Alabama ahead of what is Ira going to be an extremely busy and fun game week.
Yeah, man, it's really. It happens this time every year. You have these months of just like, is it ever going to be here? Is it ever going to be here? And then when you finally start to realize it's here, and then bam, it actually happens. We've had games this weekend, and Florida State's going to be playing. Less than a week. And I ran into somebody the other day, and they were like, "Are you ready?" And I was like, "I'm ready. We'll see if Florida State's ready," because last year they were not, but maybe this year they will be.
We're going to be ready for you at Warchant.com and Warchant TV and the Multimedia Network because we've got something to promote right out the gate. Coming up in just a moment, we're going to talk about depth chart positions of concern for Florida State football and also Alabama. It's time to get into some Alabama preview because they're through their preseason camp and into Florida State install. But coming up right here on Warchant TV, Monday night, 6 p.m., the chairman of the board is going to sit down for another chat with Irish Raffel and myself. Peter Collins will be in the house, Ira, and that should be a fascinating conversation because we're not talking about if and then statements with ACC potential lawsuits. The grant of rights won't be the thing that stops us from doing what we wish to do. This is a very different and forward-facing conversation with the chairman of the board.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation with Mr. Collins. It's he's joined us in the past, which is awesome. We always appreciate anytime he makes time for Warchant TV listeners and viewers and our website. But the lawsuit is finished. They've settled both lawsuits, Florida State and the ACC. Well, actually, all three lawsuits with Clemson going back and forth with the ACC. We've got the new details about how the revenue is going to shake out now, where FSU got what they wanted. FSU and Clemson got what they wanted, where the schools that bring in the biggest TV ratings are going to get rewarded with more money out of the ACC every year. It's going to be closer to $15 to $20 million a year extra that Florida State and Clemson should be getting compared to some of the other schools who are going to be giving up some of their share. And then also, if you do well on the football field, you can make a lot of money. Clemson, with their success on the football field, was able to make a lot of money. SMU was able to make a lot of money because of the success they had on the field. And Florida State certainly wants to get a piece of that pie as well. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about facilities. The future of college sports with the House settlement, revenue sharing, how that's all going to work. I do not predict that Peter Collins is going to predict where Florida State's going next. So to dampen any excitement on that front, he's not going to drop the bombshell that Florida State's leaving the ACC anytime soon or, giving us an indication of where they're going next. But we'll probably poke and prod as much as we can, see what we can get out of him. And just glad he's going to do it. So, I think 6 to 7 p.m. on Monday evening. And then if people miss it, you obviously can go back and watch on the channel as well.
Yeah, you never know with Chairman Collins. He did raise some eyebrows over our history. I think this will be the third or the fourth installment of a sit-down with Peter Collins on Warchant TV. So what a great way to start the week. And it's going to be a really busy week on Warchant.com, Warchant TV. We'll get into all the promotions and the things that are coming up as we get towards the weekend and Alabama. But just know, Wake Up Warchant, Jeff Cameron Show, The Smash, Seminole Headlines, all of these things that you've come to know and expect Monday through Friday are coming back in full force or just continuing on in full force as we get ready for game number one. And what's Florida State going to look like on the field for game number one? We may get an official or projected depth chart, Ira, from Florida State, but we kind of have a sense of where most of these position battles are going, at the very least, finalists at positions in question, if not outright understandings of who are going to be starters. Like, for example, at receiver that Deuce Robinson's going to be a starter, and that Squirrel White is going to be a starter as long as that health question is resolved. And Mike Norvell sounded like he was pretty confident that Squirrel would get good to go for Alabama. There are some other places, though, that are going to be worth looking at and listening for this week as Mike Norvell speaks to the media, and then, frankly, all the way up to binoculars time in the press box for warm-ups on Saturday.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, on offense, really the only question it seems like right now is maybe at offensive guard. Can Jacob Rizzi, who's had since he's come back from injury, really impressed the coaching staff? He seems to have really made a big impression on Herb Hand, the offensive line coach. Can he knock off either Adrian Medley or Richie Leonard at one of the guard spots. We'll see how that plays out. If he does, my guess is it's more Medley, but I really don't know. But those three guys are competing for the 2 guard spots. Tackles are set. Pettis and Hansen. Center we know is set. Luke Pettibone is maybe the most popular player on the team among the coaching staff. We know the quarterback, Tommy Castellanos. We know the tight end, Randy Pittman, probably the first one. Running backs, I think, there's probably maybe a little bit of question. I still think Roy Dell might get the first snap, being a senior, being that he's played so much college football. But we think Usman Cromwell will play. We think Gavin Sawchuk will definitely play as well. So that's going to be determined. And then what the formations are going to be. If they go 3 wide receivers, Javen Boggs could be one of the starting wide receivers. If they only go 2, then maybe it's a different position that gets on the field first. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, the cast of characters on offense seems pretty solidified.
And then you look at the other side for the defense, and there's some more questions there about exactly how they're going to fill things out. But honestly, with Tony White, I think that's going to be a week-to-week reality of if you're trying to judge the first snap of the game versus, who plays 50 out of 75 snaps. Tony White's going to be extremely multiple. Still, all that said, multiplicity aside, the defensive line, there's some intrigue there. And also, I think, at corner number 2, and then how the safety rotation fills out. There are question marks there, but candidates across the board, Ira, for who could be Florida State's key players at all those positions.
Yeah, I think the most solidified, other than a couple of players, we know Darrell Jackson's going to be in the middle of the defensive line. We know that James Williams can be a big part of the defensive line, the Nebraska transfer defensive end. We know it's safety. Earl Little is going to be the guy. They've anointed him. There's no question about it. Even when we talked to Evan Cooper the other day, he said he does all the right things. So they're perfectly happy with Earl Little at safety. I think at one corner, Jerry Wilson definitely has that locked down, the transfer from Houston. Linebackers, I think, are set. Omar Graham, Elijah Herring, and Justin Cryer, Juice Cryer, are locked in as the starters. And probably the next 2 are Stephon Thompson, Blake Nicholson. The other corner, one of the other safeties, I think Edwin Joseph seems like he's locked in at the other safety along with Earl Little. But that other safety spot, one of the corner spots, and then what they do on the defensive line is probably still a little bit up for grabs. If I had to put money on it right now, I think it's going to be Jabril Rawls at one of the corners. I think it'll be KJ Kirkland, though, just the way Evan Cooper talked him up this week. I think he ends up winning that battle at the other safety spot. And then defensive line, do you have any strong feelings? I think that mix of guys, along with, Darrell Jackson, James Williams. I think, Jason Jenkins is in there. Daniel Lyons is in there. There's a lot of other guys in that mix for that third spot. And then we know that, Deontay Walker, we know they're going to be mixing a lot of guys in that. Do you have a strong feeling for who you first think the first 3 or 4 or even 5 guys are going to be?
This is so tough. I think Jason Jenkins has a chance to be out there for the first snap. I think Jaden Jones has a chance to be out there for the first snap because he garnered so much praise in the first half of a preseason camp. So I think if you're just talking about a 3-man front, you just keep it there. Don't worry about the jack linebacker or any other multiple fronts. Darrell's going to be an anchor. James Williams is going to be an anchor. Jason Jenkins, Jaden Jones. Daniel Lyons has been anonymous, I think, for a whole lot of the preseason portion. And I know he was banged up heading into fall camp, so there's a little bit of there. But I would expect that Daniel Lyons is another one of those big-time rotational players. Because especially if they want to move Darrell Jackson around, which is what Tony White has hinted at, Darrell Jackson himself has spoken about that he doesn't just play over the ball or near the football. He can play at all 3 positions across the defensive line. You need Daniel Lyons because Kevin Wynn, the true freshman, who was making a lot of headlines in his first fall camp, doesn't sound like he's going to be available for this game. So I think Daniel Lyons has to be a big piece of that rotation. I want to see how much of the Desir twins play, either of them play, because every single day when the standard was talked about, the Desirs had their names come up immediately. But I think there's probably, and again, of course, Deontay McCray, Diamante Diggs, those are 2 players that intermittently are mentioned. I think your first 3 or 4 names are known, but then you're really not going to know how the coaches truly felt about some of these players until we get into the second or third quarter of the game against Alabama.
Yeah, and Deontay McCray, I think the one that, again, he hasn't been talked about a ton, but I do think Deontay McCray, the way sometimes they do talk about him, when they do talk about him, I think he might be in that top group with, is an option with Daniel Lyons, with Jason Jenkins. I just think, especially in running downs, I think they're not going to want to have one of the more slight defensive ends. But as you said, the Desir twins are certainly not slight defensive ends. I mean, they've got some size to them as well. They've got a lot of guys in that range of somewhere between 260, 265, and 275, 280 that are quote unquote defensive ends. So yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think on game day is probably when we're going to get the first real sense of it. I'm curious about this depth chart when it is released on Monday. Typically, they do release a projected depth chart. It's not written in blood. I mean, it can change, but it's usually a pretty good idea. And they'll have sometimes oars a position. Sometimes they'll put 3 different players at a position. So I don't know that that's going to solve all of it, but it might give us a little bit clearer picture. And then, yeah, I think on game day and then the rotations during the game, how they use guys in different situations, because I think that's going to be key. Passing downs, running downs, those intermediate downs. I think that's going to tell us a lot about what these coaches really think about the players.
And just be prepared, folks, to have your head spin over the course of 12 games this year. If it's not live already, we gave an advanced viewing to Warchant Gold, Warchant Premier members of the Dominic Robinson All-22 breakdowns of Tony White's defense. And specifically, it's showing you what Tony White does on third downs and how he presents multiple fronts. It's really cool. I encourage everybody to take a look at it because you have everything from a 3-man presentation to a 6-man presentation before the snap. A lot of variety. That could be what happens within the course of just the Alabama game is you have so many different looks. By the end of the game, you're probably going to need to watch it again to sort out who did what. But that is one of the reasons that Tony White is here to present that type of challenge to the opponent. And speaking of the opponent, Alabama has a couple of injuries that they're working through right now. Of course, most everybody at this point understands that Jam Miller, starting running back, is not going to be available for the game against Florida State. Ira, just watching Kalen DeBoer's press conference to speak about that. He spoke to the Tuscaloosa press on Thursday, the 21st of August, and that was the first time he addressed the Jam Miller thing. He didn't sound terribly enthusiastic about what was going on behind Jam Miller running back. It sounded like from a detail standpoint, he wasn't seeing what he wanted to see. The trust level's not quite there yet, so a little bit of work to do before kickoff against Florida State. And also they're dealing with an injury to the right side of their offensive line. Right guard, projected right guard, Jaden Roberts with a concussion after scrimmage number 1, which was weeks ago. He's still in the protocol as of the end of this week. We're taping this for transparency on the 23rd of August. It's not a perfect picture that they're painting from a health standpoint in Tuscaloosa, and they've got some things that they need to work through this week.
Yeah, and I think the thing to think about with injuries is a lot of times teams can sustain injuries. You can have an injury here or there and it not be a huge problem. But usually when you cluster them is when you really get into problems. And I think, like last year, when you look at the offensive line for Florida State, we've all talked about how bad that offensive line was last season, but they also had a couple of pretty significant injuries early in the season that really affected it. Then you had injuries at running back as well. And so once you start getting those core pieces, if you're missing 1 or 2 offensive linemen and a running back, and you've got a young quarterback, again, I just think these things can add up. If you're a coaching staff or if you're a head coach, I think that's what concerns you. If you have 2 significant injuries, but one's at safety and one's at receiver, it's not that big of a deal. But when you have those core guys that are closest to the football, offensive line, running backs, and you maybe have a young quarterback, you don't want a bunch of inexperienced guys in there because the quarterback needs to lean on those guys. So I could see that being a concern. I don't know that it's enough to change how any of us feel about the game. I think Florida State's still going to be a prohibitive underdog. It's still going to be a huge challenge for them to win that football game. But when you have some things like that happen in clusters, it could definitely be a concern, especially with a young quarterback.
Yeah, not a projected right starter at right guard if the concussion protocol issues continue for Jaden Roberts. I mean, obviously he's missed weeks of reps too, which is important when you're talking about getting up to full speed. At left guard, you've got a Texas A&M transfer. If you're Alabama on the offensive line, you're breaking in a new right guard, and then you got program guys. At center, left tackle, they're all set. Caden Proctor's an all-world player. But yeah, I mean, if you're this is not quite on the level of Florida State bringing 5 new dudes from different places in the country and putting them together. But Alabama is going to be sweating some of those same issues, and they'll be doing so with the crowd noise of Doak Campbell Stadium, which should be rocking this upcoming Saturday, 3:30 kick. Just a little over. I don't know that we get the final official attendance number yet, but it's 70,000 and change, I think. Is that right, Ira, for the 3:30 kick against Alabama?
I think it'll end up being just over 70,000, but I think the official capacity is closer to 68.5, somewhere in there. But I'm sure, usually it goes a couple thousand over that. So I would expect that to be the case.
So coming up this week, there's just so much to get to, and that's why, even though this is a short version of the Chant, I'm doing this kind of early in the pod. We're talking to Peter Collins on Monday night. We've got the Smash Monday. You can expect another edition of the Chant Thursday in your feeds. Wake Up Warchant Live will be on Wednesday, and I'm skipping over the 1 o'clock shows that we always do. Jeff Cameron Show, Seminole Headlines Monday, Tuesday, Cameron Show Wednesday through Friday. Then we've got other features like Henshaw's House for a game week version, Ira. The Warpath will be back on Friday for another recruiting look, which is important. Listener events, Friday at Corner Pocket Bar and Grill from 4 to 8 p.m., including Wake Up Warchant Live at 6 from the back deck of the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. We're back at Hotel Indigo on Saturday for our pregame get-togethers. This is a chock-full week. So I guess all this to say, if you're going to sign up for $1 for your first week of warchant.com, what better week than this one?
And if you haven't yet, what are you thinking? But no, definitely, please jump on board. We'll have tons of written content on the site as well. The video stuff, we've got more than enough here on Warchant TV, the YouTube channel. But please go to warchant.com and check out some of the written stories we have. Plenty of recruiting coverage. Matt and Michael are doing a lot of recruiting coverage coming up to this game. I think Matt reported that there's going to be about 100 prospects, 100 recruits at this game. And it's not like they're just taking anybody. It's not like any recruit in the country could say, hey, I want to come. Derek Ray told them, no, we're kind of selective. This is an exclusive list. And they're going to have 100 top recruits with a lot of their family members there. And man, can you imagine the impact that could have if Florida State just plays well? Certainly if they win the game, if they just play well in that game with all those recruits, a brand new stadium. So we'll have a lot of coverage of the recruiting aspect of it going up to the game and then after the game as well. So you're going to want to have that subscription to warchant.com.
One thing I heard from the interview with Derek Ray, and I encourage everybody to go watch the Warpath or listen to the Warpath this week, where they had Florida State General Manager Derek Ray for an extended chat, was that at least the kids can get into the football-only facility right now. It's a hard hat situation, I believe is what he said. But to see the vision, because the building from the outside is something. And if you have not been on campus in a while, everybody, you're coming up for this weekend's game, make your way over towards the Sod Cemetery. That football-only facility is striking. It's really important, Ira, that they're able to take the kids in there, at least to take them on a tour of what they're going to be seeing if they come here to choose Florida State as their future destination.
I mean, 100%. I mean, I'm really glad to hear that they're going to be able to do that. And so, again, if you're a recruit, if you're considering Florida State and some other schools, and they've got you to this point, and then you go in that building, there's not going to be a newer football-only facility in the country. There's probably not going to be a better, more state-of-the-art football facility. They've got this virtual reality room, all the things they're doing in there that's cutting edge, the rehab equipment, the cold and hot pools, all that stuff is going to be state-of-the-art. And then you go from there, then you go to the game in a newly renovated Doak Campbell Stadium. Again, Florida State has not recruited the level they want to, but now all these things are in place that it really should make a big difference.
Anything else specifically, Ira, in a busy week that we should promote before we sign off today?
Yeah, man. The last thing I would just say is just, we've talked about all the bells and whistles. This week is also when we'll really get down to the nuts and bolts of the matchups of this game, really breaking down how Florida State's going to look to attack Alabama's offense, how Alabama's offense will likely look to attack Florida State's defense. A little bit more on the coaching staffs. I've got a feature that I talked about a little while ago. I still hadn't run, but it's may run by the time this is on the air, but probably within the next day. A feature on Tony White, Florida State's new defensive coordinator, and how he his story of how he came to be at Florida State, his background, why he coaches the way he does. And that story will be up on the site too. So again, it may already be up when this airs, or it may be coming shortly, but that'll be up as well on the site.
A little nugget on Alabama's offensive line before we sign off here. If you just look at PFF, and I know everybody, yes, exhale. Pass protection, much better than run blocking. Interesting, right? Considering that they have a backup running back situation, and maybe you line up and you dare a young quarterback or an inexperienced quarterback to beat you. That's a matchup that will be explored on the site this week as well.
And just look at the numbers. The statistics back that up, because it's other than Jaden Milroe, Milroe's the one who ran the ball really well for them. The backs were pretty pedestrian numbers across the board. So I think PFF may be right on that.
Ira, can't wait, man. Here we go. It's time.
Let's go.